in which bringing a being into existence in some sense requires this negative aspect. In this case, it would be a premature death. And you say something like, well, maybe it would be better to not have that premature death, but if it weren't for the fact that we were going to kill them, they wouldn't exist at all, and they have an overall good life that's worth living, then if those are the options, no life at all, or a life that involves the premature death, what's the problem with favouring the latter? And you say, and as I say, the reason I think this is a problem is because if we look in a human context, it seems that our intuitions are screaming.
It sounds like Alex is about to ask Peter Singer to name the trait, and that makes me so happy. It makes me so happy. I absolutely just I can't express how much I love that Alex is talking about animal rights again, and it makes me so happy that he's yeah, okay, just yeah.
At us that to do this to a human being would be an ethical abomination. To raise human beings, and perhaps you could keep them isolated so they don't know what's going on. Maybe they're in some kind of cult that thinks that once you turn 18 years old, you sort of go into a different realm or something, but you take them through the door and you slice their throats. Maybe you put a bolt through their head first if you're feeling particularly humane. I think people would ridicule this view, especially if it was promoted as a form of humanely killing them, because sure, it's humane in comparison to what we might do on a factory farm, but perhaps compared to what the moral worth of these beings require, to call it humane would be something of a travesty. At least in a human context, I would imagine you would think that that would be at least wrong and possibly grossly wrong.
So I think in a human context, it's not possible to avoid spillover effects in terms of, the accept.
Blah 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 blah. Peter Singer's talking nonsense right now. He's avoiding the answer. The answer is a very easy answer. Obviously, if right, it's a big if. If it were the case that a premature death was required for existence, with a certain subset of human, then obviously, and if that life was a good life, then obviously, yes, of course. It's an easy answer. Yes, absolutely. Um, absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely yes.
Acceptability of killing other humans, and I think that's really the problem there, because we do, as humans, we want to go on living, clearly, and if we discover that humans are being killed in this way, that's going to mean that we're going to fear that there'll be less respect for human life and that we will be killed. I think there are consequences because of our consciousness, our awareness, and our understanding of what's going on.
Peter's avoiding the answer. He's dilly-dallying.
For animals, that doesn't generally apply, I think. So I think as you say, the intuitions that we have that scream to us that this is wrong if done for humans, we don't have those about animals. And I think there may be, as I say, reasons why we don't have those about animals. That now you could say, well, that's just because we're speciesist and we use animals without thinking about their interests. But
if I want to be charitable, it's possible that Peter Singer didn't realize what Alex was trying to do. I think it's pretty clear that Alex was creating a trait equalized human, and so and then saying that with that trait equalized human, there's still a sort of something within us that is saying that says ew, gross, and perhaps Peter Singer missed that. Perhaps I don't know, but I really feel like he's dancing around the question and not giving a clear answer, which is kind of annoying.
In these conditions that we've been talking about, as I say, I think it's very hard to argue that it is contrary to their interests. So I wouldn't simply say, well, we wouldn't do this to humans, so therefore it must be wrong to do it to animals.
So to be clear, in the situation I described of raising isolated human beings until they're 18 and then killing them secretly, the thing that's wrong about that, in your view, is just the fact that there's a risk that this might cause other human beings to be scared that somehow they're going to get caught up in it. I mean, I can imagine very strict laws in place that unless you were born.
Yeah, all you have to do is just imagine, think of it just within the hypothetical. Don't think about other consequences. Just within the hypothetical, there's a subset of humans that exist, and they wouldn't have existed otherwise if they weren't killed prematurely at the age of 18. Maybe perhaps they exist in some island or whatever. Yeah, just think of really add any sort of restrictions to the hypothetical. Whatever will get you to a trait equalized scenario between the animal and the human. And that's what seems like what Alex is trying to do, and Peter's refusing to answer.
A member of this particular set of human beings who are bred in particular to be kept isolated and to be bred for food, perhaps for just the sake of our taste pleasure. Unless you're a member of that group, you're not allowed to be touched by anybody. You can imagine the laws are incredibly strict on this. And you could say, sure, well, there's a sense in which people might think there's a disrespect for human lives that may one day eventually evolve into a problem for us. But you could say the same thing about animal consumption. You could say, if we're going to begin to recognize a speciesism in the way that we think, and we're kind of okay with killing animals, then shouldn't we be terrified that one day we'll be okay with killing humans too? And we think no, because we've put very strict boundaries around this, not just morally, but also legally, that sure, you can kill a pig, but you can't kill a human being. In this situation where I'm killing human beings early-ish in their lives, say 18 years old, none of the humans who are going to be killed find out. All of the humans who do know about this practice know that they're never going to be a member of that group of people. Is the only thing that could be wrong with that, in your view, just the small risk that sort of something might go wrong there and people might be scared? Is there not something wrong with the killing?
I mean, you also have to say, of course, that these humans would not have existed at all. There's no way in which they would have come into existence, except that they were going to be killed at 18 for some reason.
Yes, to the same extent that an animal on a humane farm, as you describe it, might not have existed unless it was going to be killed for food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a big if. I'm gonna sort of dilly-dally a little bit like Peter Singer. That is a big if. I feel like we could have these individuals exist without a premature death. But if it were the case that they wouldn't, then obviously, yes, 1,000% yes, and it's an easy answer for me. And yeah, I'll give you that answer because Peter Singer won't. And I mean, he eventually does, but he really just dilly-dallied around. It's very annoying. So, anyways, that's the answer.